Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my esteemed co-host and co-chair, that's right, I said it, co-chair, not
You
vice chair,
did.
co-chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Leibowitz, also the host of a fantastic show that you should be watching as often as possible if you want to get smarter, called The Rational Egoist. Now, did you know Rand read books, and she would say afterwards, some of the books, of course, she would say, after reading that book, I was smarter. Now, I think that's possible. I think you read some books and you integrate the information, it creates new synapses in your brain, you become a smarter person. This is going to happen when you watch The Rational Egoist, I guarantee you. I have a quick question to ask before I get into the first joke of the day. Otherwise known as the news, but this is really a joke that I think will go over on the Trumpsters out there. At least I hope it does, and I hope it starts changing their mind about their man. Did Noah from the American Communist Party actually take you up on your offer to debate him?
No, he did not. He first said he might be able to, but he has to work. It depends on the weather. And then he said, no, I can't because I'm working. And then he said, well, maybe. So whatever. I'm not, to be honest, like usually I would just say, no, I don't want to. I'm done with the dude. But sometimes I just get that hankering, like I read the thing he's put out there this morning that anti-communists don't even understand communism. And then I just get it into, I just want to mentally eviscerate this dude. You know what I mean? So I said, let's debate. But I didn't expect him to say yes. It's the same pattern. Well, maybe I could do it, but I don't know. And yada, yada, yada. What I can do, though, is post incessantly on X, and I can slander Mark Pellegrino and pretend I'm not, and, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're good at that kind of stuff. They gaslight. That's what they do. I wonder, have you read Mises's Anti-Capitalist Mindset?
Yes.
That's a great book.
Yes, I've read most of what Mises has written.
Although I do take issue with his reasons why Hollywood and Broadway have gone communist, and maybe we'll talk about that some other time because we have jokes to get to right now. And here's the first joke of the day, folks. I'm going to read it straight from Axios. This is about Doge. Right, we all know what Doge is. Elon Musk was a permanent fixture in the early weeks of the administration, but he quickly became a political liability. His mass firings and chaotic hiring of some federal workers are now estimated to have cost taxpayers $135 billion, wiping out most of the $160 billion that Doge claims it saved. Now, let's just be upfront completely. Those were projected savings. So the 160, 150 billion were projected savings. The actual number is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of between 60 and 90 billion dollars. So it turns out the Doge has become a net loss for the government. Go figure.
That is funny. Yeah, like I never bought it from the start. I'm surprised that people did, but the thing is that we have to keep in mind, and this, if we're going to talk about Dr. Peikoff afterwards, this is something that we always have to keep in mind, is that people have a different context of information. So there's people that bought into Doge at first. The question is, will they continue to buy into it? Will you continue to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Now, to me, it was obvious, but not to everybody. The idea of a Department of Government efficiency, I mean, come on. Like, I don't even know what to say. How do you even, the name, it sounds like something out of Orwell or Dickens, right? Like, I remember in, what was it? I want to say Little Dorrit, but I'm not positive. They had what they called the circumlocution office, right? Where you went to find your public information and you just got, spun around constantly. And that's what this kind of language reminds me of.
Yeah, you don't. Look, the problem isn't that government isn't efficient. That's just the way government is. It's completely incompetent in almost everything it does, except in potentially one area, force mitigation. And if it only had to concentrate on that, if it only had to concentrate on regulating force and mitigating force, banning force from all interpersonal relationships, it might be able to focus on its job a little better and be a little more effective than doing the 99.9% of the stuff that it already does. So already the premise of the Trump administration to make government more efficient is actually sort of scary to me, because it's just like, yeah, we don't disagree with these status programs that steal from you and redistribute your wealth. We just want to make sure they do it better and faster. Sorry, I'd prefer not. I'd prefer not to. In addition, let's just start out again by saying that Elon Musk said he was going to cut $2 trillion from spending. Then that went down to 1 trillion, and then that was getting so much pushback by the politicians inside the Beltway and the American people, that Trump quietly went to Elon Musk and said, no chainsaw. Let's not be like Malay, after all, who is improving the government for real in Argentina and the economy in Argentina, more like a scalpel. And so they went way, 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 way down to $150 billion. And even that isn't what they're projected to do. Now, do you know how much the government costs per day to run?
No, I don't, but it's a lot. It's more than I could fathom.
It's probably like around there, or probably maybe he cut 2 days of government, probably somewhere in that area. It's pretty ridiculous.
But didn't actually cut it.
But didn't. This is all theoretical. Now, this is in part due, folks, to the fact that they refuse to touch entitlements, which are the primary reason we are in spiraling debt right now. And there's really no other way to deal with inflation and the spiraling debt without touching entitlements. I'm sorry, it has to happen. Literally has to happen. And if somebody doesn't have the political will to do it, we're going over the cliff. Now, I know that Misesians have been saying this for a long time, and free market economists have been talking about the debt and it's spiraling out of control, and we're going to reach that tipping point. And the MMT people and the Keynesian economists have been saying the debt doesn't matter, and see, but look at the proof. Now we're $37 trillion in debt and really not suffering all that badly. Well, folks, the debt is sort of like your bathtub draining. It drains very, very slowly and then all at once. Or as Hemingway said a character of his in his book was asked, "How did you go bankrupt?" He said, "First very slowly, then all at once." So when it happens, folks, it's going to happen in a fairly catastrophic and quick manner, and we are coming to that tipping point. And so we have to start cutting entitlements. Whether Trump wants to or not, if he really does care about bringing down inflation, it's not going to be accomplished in almost any of the ways that he is proposing right now, with some exceptions like deregulation. But he's taking a scalpel to deregulation too.
Are they really deregulating? A scalpel, not a chainsaw. Yeah, I'm sorry, because in the last administration, they actually had net increases in regulation, contrary to the talking points that they had cut regulation. And
I thought they were supposed to, for every new regulation, they were supposed to cut 10 regulations. You mean that didn't?
Well, it was 2, but I think, but the problem with that is this. The problem is, what are the regulations? You cut 2 small regulations and put in place 1 large regulation, and now you've got a problem. And also, the idea that the debt doesn't matter, there's no telling how much of a drag it's been on the economy and continues to be so. So while we may not have seen the catastrophic consequences that people often talk about, that doesn't mean that, when's the last time we've had sustained growth of over 2.5%? Right. And how much of that is attributable to the debt? I personally don't know, but I do know that when you're paying interest on the debt, that necessarily means taxes or increasing the money supply, which is going to lead to inflation. So you've got a problem there, and that stuff does drag on the economy. We just can't know how much.
Now, it sounds like you're drawing off of Bastiat here with his seen and unseen. It sounds like there are unseen consequences that we're not able to perceive right now that are probably far worse than the seen consequences. So whatever we're seeing with respect to inflation, downturns in production and stuff, it doesn't even compare to the stuff that's not happening as a result of all the diversion of this wealth and capital to try to go to pay down this debt, which now is running an interest rate of $1 trillion and is what, 120% of our gross domestic product? And how much of our gross domestic And how much of our gross domestic product is now figuring in government jobs as part of the productive quotient of our country? Dudes, we're in a mess right now, and neither party has the political will to change things because they're afraid, and the American people have certainly grown distant from the Constitution and understanding what their rights are about. But there is a party that exists right now that will actually make principled change. Michael, do you know what that party is by chance?
I do. It's the American Capitalist Party. And actually, both Mark and I at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific will be on the Sharper Way with Larry Sharp later today discussing the American Capitalist Party. So everybody, please tune in to that. In addition to tuning into this, you're just going to have all kinds of content to be devouring and top-notch content.
I agree with you, and I'm not boasting, but I do agree with you. And you can also look at our content on AmericanCapitalistParty.org. Donate, become the change. I know I say that all the time, but don't you want to become a change? Don't you want to be a son or daughter or brother or sister of liberty? Don't you want to be that new movement that actually pushes us in the right direction again? I know I do. That's why I'm here, and I think that's why you may be here for all of you listening to us today. So there's an article in Reason Magazine today. It really bugged me, man. I got to tell you, this is Ron DeSantis, or should I call him Little Caesar? We could call the Trumpster the Big Caesar. We could call DeSantis the Little Caesar, because he bragged recently about signing a bill so that Florida became the first state to ban lab-grown meat. Now, there's no evidence to suggest that lab-grown meat is bad for you, that it's less nutritious, that it doesn't provide everything that regular grass-fed meat provides for you. But DeSantis is concerned about agriculture in the state of Florida. He's concerned about the ranchers and the beef growers over there in Florida, and so he decided to make this ban. Certainly not in the consumer's interest or in the interests of any of his constituents, his voting constituency, who have to pay for this stuff over in Florida, but it's definitely satisfying the lobbying group of agriculture over there, and the meat suppliers. What do you think of this? First of all, what do you think of what DeSantis did? And there seems to be immediate legal action against this law, which I completely and totally agree with. And what do you think should be done about this? What should be our perspective with respect to what DeSantis is doing?
Well, I've been hearing about lab-grown meat for a while now out of right-wing circles. They're very critical of it. It's part of some, the conspiracy from the who are those people? I forget. The World Monetary, whatever. I don't know. The World Economic Forum, I think it is. But the thing that I find interesting is, if the stuff is so horrible, then why do you have to pass laws against it? It couldn't compete anyway. It seems that the fear is that it's actually good and that people are going to want it. And so my question is, who the hell is Ron DeSantis to prevent people from buying what they want to buy? And do so. And I think he said something to the effect of he's protecting liberty. This is absurd that you would make that claim. People have a right to contract with whom they want. It's that damn simple, right? Now, there's this constitutional issue, and the author of Reason rightly points out that the initial purpose of the Commerce Clause, the United States Constitution, to regulate commerce, was to do just that, to make commerce regular throughout the union so that we would not have states putting up tariffs against other states. So the claim is that because I think this company's in California, that what they're doing is they're basically de facto regulating commerce from coming across state lines. And the reason for doing so is to protect Florida businesses. So not only is it ethically wrong, not only is it economically illiterate, but it also may be running afoul of the United States Constitution. But I'm sure that we'll be told soon how Florida is the libertarian state and how DeSantis is the liberty guy, much in the same way as we're told that Trump is the most libertarian president ever, and that, you know, he's pro-capitalist and yada, yada, yada.
Well, given that libertarianism really stands for nothing, it's quite possible that they could make those claims. Hey, you know, I mean, I think we need a legal scholar here like James Valiant to answer some of these questions. But I was curious as to why they called this the dormant clause in the Commerce Clause, because it seemed to be the real purpose of the Interstate Commerce Clause was essentially to prevent states from tariffing or passing laws against other states in trade, and to create an atmosphere of free trade. So why do they call it dormant? As if
I am going to take a crack at a guess, and then I'm going to ask Grok what it actually is. I believe it's called dormant because it hasn't been referenced ever. Because you maybe at the beginning of the Republic, but it's just the common acceptance that there's free flow of goods between states. So it hasn't had to been enacted or referenced or anything else. That's my guess. So now let me ask Grok here. What is the Dormant Commerce Clause and why is it called that? Let's see.
Good old AI.
It's called dormant. The term, it is the regular Commerce Clause. The term dormant reflects the idea that this limitation on state power is not explicitly stated in the Constitution, but is inferred as an inherent aspect of Congress's authority over interstate commerce. When Congress is silent, its commerce power. When Congress is silent, its commerce power is dormant. The clause still operates to prevent states from passing laws that interfere with the free flow of interstate commerce or favor in-state businesses over out-of-state ones. The U.S. Supreme Court has interpreted this principle to maintain a national economic market and prevent protectionist state policies, which this seems to be a protectionist state policy.
Now, James Valiant says dormant means stopping the states rather than empowering the feds. That's interesting. That's a nice
concept. That's a good point, because that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Now, Alan Thomas says something here. I think one fear is that it wasn't the choice between Wagyu, grass-fed, corn-fed, or lab-grown. The fear is that lab-grown will be the forced choice. Now, of course, DeSantis referred to that international council, economic council, with that Klaus Schwab character, who's like the evil Sith Lord of the universe, said you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and also implied that we would be eating bugs in the future and enjoy that. And that seems to be the left's pushing us in this meatless direction. And I guess Alan is suggesting that one of the things that DeSantis is fighting against is that, but that's an entirely different.
I hate those arguments.
They're terrible.
I hate them.
But you can go ahead and explain why.
No, I hate it because we fear that the government's going to force something on us. We're going to use the government force to prevent us from having it. Why not just get rid of the force and allow people to do what they want? It's so logical and so obvious as to me to barely warrant discussion, but that type of thing always comes up. Yes, but they have a secret agenda.
It's the conflation also of political and economic power. I mean, this is a private organization in California. I don't know what their political connections are. I mean, unfortunately, most businesses have to be politically connected nowadays in our mixed economy, but they still are a private corporation. They can't force you to eat the meat, the lab-grown meat. Now, here's an aside, though, that I'm curious about. Do you think lab-grown meat might change veganism as we know it today? So people who don't eat meat for ethical reasons because it means the killing and slaughtering of animals and what they think is the torture and unethical treatment of animals, well, now that's not happening. And they can still get that nutritious protein now without committing acts of murder against their four-footed friends. And four-hooved friends, I should say. So what say you to this? I mean, there's a great upside to this California creating meat out of petri dishes.
Well, I think that this company's just got an excellent non-paid endorsement from Mark Pellegrino. It's nutritious. They can get the same nutrition. I don't know how vegans will feel about it. And if you look at, for instance, the pro-life movement, right? They don't want people to have an abortion, but then they take that out to the ultimate absurdity of we can't use stem cells. They don't want the use of stem cells or in vitro fertilization. So I don't know, about the vegans or much about them. And these are still animal products, right? They're not.
But they've never been alive, per se.
Yeah, they've never been alive. So I don't know what the effect would be. I would try it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? If it's good, great. If it's sucks, I won't eat it.
Tests. I've actually seen videos.
You've had it?
I've never had it, but I've seen taste tests, and people can't distinguish between the chicken that's been farm raised and the petri dish grown.
Well, if they can't tell the difference, then let's go, bring it on.
And if the nutritional value is the same, or maybe even enhanced, hey man, better living by science, as I say. Yeah. So,
are you saying trust the science?
I am saying that I go with science, and I go with progress over Ludditism, if that's even a word. Should we have rejected the automobile because it would discourage horse and buggy making? I don't think so. Progress is sort of about burning down the old stuff and replacing it with new stuff.
Yeah, I think we should have rejected everything beyond the spear and loincloth. I think that's what we should have, and no progress after that, because after all, people were employed making loincloths and spears. And what has happened to those jobs?
And not only that, hunting and gathering. I mean, that employed everybody in the community. The hunters had to hunt, the gatherers had to gather.
That's true.
And you know what? The diet was more varied back then. Now look, I shit you not. There is an archaeologist out of Israel who argues this, and who's very popular. His books are widely read, and he admires hunter-gatherer culture and actually thinks that we should go back to those times. How that kind of culture supports 7 billion people, I'm still
could not
about. But I don't think he's thinking in those terms. And there are those in the environmental movement who I think are perfectly fine with 6 billion people leaving the planet. And not by some biblical form of what do they call it, end of days where Jesus comes.
The apocalypse.
It's not the apocalypse. I forget what it is. Somebody out there who's Christian can remind me.
A demiurge. Demiurge. Is that what you're talking about?
It's the end. It's the end times when Jesus.
That's the apocalypse.
No. But then the dead rise and all the Christians go bodily to heaven.
Jim, come on. Get in here and tell us what we're talking about here. The rapture, I think. Maybe
there it is, the rapture, yes. And we're not talking about 6 million people disappearing because of the rapture. We are talking about 6 billion people dying.
Armageddon. We have Armageddon. We have the rapture.
No,
we have the deluge. The rapture. The rapture seems to be winning here.
This is another thing. Why do I always have to register myself with the Epic Times? You'd think they'd know me by now. But this is an article from the Epic Times which disturbed me too. Hold on, I have to do a Face ID. There we go. So it seems that the Trump administration now wants to pass a law respecting the linguistic capabilities of truckers. Now, they want all truckers to speak English fluently. Now, I didn't, since I just got this stuff this morning, I didn't do a deep dive into exactly how many truckers come from Mexico and how many people from foreign countries are actually doing our shipping. But I'm sure it's a fairly significant number of truckers from Mexico come over and transport goods into the United States of America. Now, as far as I know, there are no there's no reports out there that I've ever seen of a higher number of accidents, a higher number of vehicular incidents, a higher number of problems with people, non-English speaking people driving merchandise from one country to another. but yet Trump wants to make this a qualification for driving, despite the fact that I don't think there's been any real issue. My qualification for driving is, can you drive the vehicle safely from point A to point B on a regular basis? That would be my qualification. I've driven in tons of foreign countries. I don't understand the languages of everything except France. Okay, I don't understand any of the other languages, and yet somehow I managed to get from point A to point B. And now with GPS, which can give me, directions in any language I choose, I have even less of a trouble getting from point A to point B. What do you think about this ridiculous? Now I'm editorializing. I'm almost pushing you
Okay.
to
Well,
give an answer. I should.
I need to editorialize a little myself because I noticed there was a hint of an aspersion cast my way by you when you said, I just got this article this morning. Well, the problem is I have to get these articles to you fresh. I can't give you news from 3 days ago. So I sent it to you this morning. So I feel like there's some blame being cast my way. And I just want to vindicate myself in front of the audience. Now, as far as this story goes, they made a point that on first glance I thought was a decent point, although I still wouldn't have supported the policy. Is what they said is that truckers need to be able to read the signs because you're driving and the signs, stop, slow, yield, whatever. But first of all, that wouldn't mean that they had to speak English, because it's possible to be able to read English and not speak it, right? But the other thing is you made an excellent point just now. Well, what is the evidence that this is causing a problem? Because they also reference their ability to communicate with law enforcement. Do we have this huge problem in this country of people not being able to communicate with law enforcement because they can't speak English, or driving off the road because they can't read street signs? I don't think we have a problem. I think what we have is Trump wanting to cater to a constituency that is the truckers and their unions. And this is a way to do it, because if you eliminate people that can't speak English, you necessarily eliminate part of the labor force, which will artificially cause the price of labor to rise. And I think that is the real purpose of this. And I think it's dumb. It's economically illiterate. And again, it's completely immoral. It's completely unhinged, and it's completely detached from what the United States of America is supposed to be. And if we had a president from the American Capitalist Party, we wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yeah, folks, because the object is to get products from point A to point B safely and efficiently to the consumer, to the customer. That's you guys who are producing values to exchange for those things. And you should be allowed to purchase those items as cheaply as possible, right? We want your standard of living to rise. We don't want it to fall because we have a truckers union to protect. We want your standard of living to rise, not little pockets of individual folks who have political power and can cartelize their industry. We don't want them made richer at your expense. We want you to rise and to be able to rise yourself. And for that, we need to get government out of this. Yeah, so that's interesting. He's trying to domesticate the trucking business, isn't he? He's trying to, again, more insular protectionism. That's frightening. Although somebody made a comment here, I have to see if I could find it. Akira says something here. It seems that Mark hasn't seen Better Call Saul. Obviously, Mexican cartels are the owners of the trucks. I would not be surprised if this is a reason that the Trump administration puts out there at some point. In order to, make this go down easier on the American public. So moving right along, folks, from one disaster to the next. Are we moving along from one disaster to the next? I feel like we have a.
Well, I don't know where you're going next, Mark. So how can I know if it's a disaster?
So this probably isn't a disaster now that I'm looking at it. But
my God.
But with the Trump administration, the non-disastrous things are completely accidental, right? So when we think about, so the left, for example, is crowing and crowing and crowing about free speech in the universities and the fact that Trump is defunding the universities. Well, That's actually an accidentally good thing. Okay, the federal government should not be funding universities. These should be private affairs. But it's for the wrong reasons. It's because they're not doing or saying what he wants them to say.
Right.
And likewise, he threatens to withhold funding from sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Well, accidentally, that's a good thing because the federal government shouldn't be funding states at all. But he's doing it for the wrong reasons because the states won't comply with him.
Yes.
And so this is sort of setting off an interesting battle, which I think needs to be had, which is the battle for federalism, where the states are claiming co-equal power, where they can make claims that the federal government can't touch in a way, or at least they have to be adjudicated by the Supreme Court so that we can get clarity on the issue. And so in some ways, the states, many of whom I would disagree, with their politicians on almost 100% of the things that they hold dear, are actually sort of forcing a constitutional crisis that probably should happen. I mean, these issues have to be resolved, and President Trump has to be put in his place, in my view. What say you?
It's very tricky for me. The fundamental to me that needs to be addressed in this situation, well, there's actually, I suppose, two primary points. One, people have a right to migrate from country to country. There should be no barriers stopping that. Now, a case can be made, of course, if we're at war, if they're carrying communicable diseases, if they're violent criminals, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, people have a right to pass where they want. Okay. The other thing is the federal government has no authority over immigration. It's simply not in the Constitution. So that conflicts with my idea. I believe in the rule of law, but if the laws themselves are unjust, then are these states required to comply? They're unjust or unconstitutional. But the flip side of that is it's not as if these state bureaucracies or state politicians are making a principled argument, right? So the whole thing turns into a mess. But what I did hear is that the states by law, and I don't know, I haven't studied the issue, but I did read this, that the states by law are required to comply. Like they can't hide people, they can't misdirect, that sort of thing. But they aren't required by law to do the feds' work for them. They're not required to employ their staff, their cops, to go apprehend these people. Now, it needs to be looked into further because I haven't looked into it, more deeply than that. But that would make sense to me. But to me, the main issues are the constitutional issues and the moral issues. And on these, the Trump administration, the Biden administration, the Obama administration, and every administration before that have just been wrong.
Yeah, we're in a fix, man. We're in a fix that's not going to take one administration to fix, but probably 4 or 5. I mean, it's taken us decades to get to this place, almost 100 years, actually, to get to the place we're at now. So it's not going to be fixed overnight. And certainly Trump doesn't have the answers, and the left most certainly doesn't. Akira has given us another quotable comment here. Magatards.
Magatards.
Sorry, magatard xenophobia is turning into racism very fast. Magatard. Now, so I know the R word has been sort of making a comeback now in the libertarian world, of course, because they're, what they are. They're sort of out of touch with culture. But I think magatard is probably a viable word we could use, right? I think magatard is maybe the new way into this formerly banned.
I don't know. I'm not a real big fan of language police and political correctness, but there does seem to be kind of a douchiness to the people who want to just keep saying retard and that's gay and that sort of thing. It's just like they just want to be jerks, right? And that's just a sense I get from my overall interactions with these people. I couldn't prove it in a court of law, but I'm not in a court of law, right? So that's what I think. But magatard, I do kind of like it. I have to confess, I do kind of like it. So
But,
Well,
and I think Akira should know that there's a new Mafia movement,
I've
and there's
seen this. I've heard of this.
no way the Mafia movement could be called Mafia Tards. And the Mafia movement is Make America Free Again.
It is.
Yes, and we are going to co-opt this Magatard movement, turn it around so that it is no longer has that moniker, so that it is now a movement of reasonable, intelligent people attempting to create values and make their lives better.
What if we develop the Make America Free and Independent again?
And independent again. So would that be Mafi?
That would be Mafia.
Mafia? No, and independent.
You don't include the "and" in those things. Like you don't say USOA, it's USA, United States of America. So you just roll with that. That's what you do. Now
Right.
we have what's here. Ian Gilmore makes an awesome point. He says the idea of bad manners still exists, and I couldn't agree more. I really don't like bad manners, and it's not to say I'm never guilty of it, but in general, I'm big on good manners. Akira Felix likes Mafia. I think that might already be copyrighted, though. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure we want to cross
I
the
have
guys.
to admit that now that I'm looking at it in front of me, my mental dyslexia was actually in full gear. Yeah, Mafia. Yeah, it is taken already. It does have bad connotations, so I don't know that we could use it, or maybe we could and play off it.
Make the Mafia great again.
Well, look, I mean, look, America has two distinct genres of film, I think, that are you that fall into like great genre in film and unique to America because it expresses something unique about America, and that is westerns and gangster flicks. And there's something about the gangster movies, the rugged individualism, the defiance against authority, the going your own way, even though it's in a toxic manner. But those elements, those values are things that are very much unique to America and relatable to Americans. And I think we could play on that with this Mafia. Is, make America free and independent again. We could play with this. So I think we have to think about it.
All right, we'll give it some
New
consideration.
New Mafia, right? You can
New Mafia.
Yeah. So this latest thing comes from Mother Jones, and it's one of those things that I interpreted as possibly a good thing for all the wrong reasons. So apparently, disability protection groups in 2 states paused services after missing federal funds. So a couple of states, they have apparatus there that serve the disabled. They're subsidized by the government, and they serve the disabled who have likely complaints against the state for failing to serve them properly or give them the funds that they need. So they represent them legally, and they were anticipating a certain amount of funding that did not come in. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of half of the funds came in, and so they had to pause their services. Now, again, the disabled and the people and people like that and children, for example, are what the left and the statists love to use to justify their programs. They're the poor, people who they think will not be capable of accessing services. So it's not a market value, so they claim, and so it needs to be taken care of by the government. Maybe even somebody like a Friedman would claim something like that, because he seemed to be a bit of a supporter for certain kinds of programs like this, because he didn't think they had a market value. Now, what say you, first of all, about the lack of funds for these representatives of disabled folks?
Well, I feel the same way about this on the one side as I do about all the Trump policies and everything that's happening really on both sides. Is it's just not being principally done. It's not like they're opposed to the initiation of force. They're for free market capitalism. They seem to be just going after organizations and agencies they don't like. Mother Jones, on the other hand, I think, first of all, I mean, it's a far left magazine, and they're just upset about their issue here. They're not principally opposed to Trump administration to the use of force or any of these things. They just want their people to get what they want to be provided at the expense of taxpayers, right? And this is the exact problem, or a big problem that we have, is that we have a left wing that wants bigger government to do what they wanted to do. And then we have a right wing who wants big government to do what they want to do. And there's very few people that are actually arguing for liberty. And even those of us who do, we're very divided on what exactly liberty means, on how to argue for it. And it makes things very difficult. So I don't know the answer, what to do about it, but I do know that Mother Jones is coming at it from the wrong angle. Because on the one hand, they would say that Trump's being a tyrant by deporting people, by rounding people up, or censoring free speech, but yet they have no problem with the government taking money from people to provide goods and services to other people.
Well, that's because they operate from the oppressor-oppressed narrative, the same narrative that our commie friends operate from.
Yes.
And so if he's taking funds from the disabled, they are the oppressed just simply because
I don't even like the language, right? Because it implies that the funds are the disabled, that they belong to them and they're being taken from them.
Yeah.
When what's really happened is you're stopping giving it to them.
Correct.
But it's not as if that's going to result in large tax cuts or a freeing up of the market. It's just money that's going to be spent somewhere else that Trump wants it spent. As an aside, I think 2 years ago now, I actually debated the senior editor of Mother Jones magazine, Michael Mechanic. Yes, that's his name, Michael Mechanic. And we debated, he wrote an article on how horrible generational wealth is. And so he and I had a debate over the subject. I highly recommend it. It was very good. Very good for our side, I should say.
So maybe that can be posted, or can they just find it? They go to your.
You can find it. I would like to post it, but I've got a lot to do. Right. I got an interview at 4, then I got the other interview we have at 7, and I've developed a new policy now, Mark. I haven't told you. I've just done it on my own, where right now this is called the Capitalist Corner episode 21, because I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about when we come on the air. But once I know, now I can change the title at the end. So now every episode will have a different title when somebody goes back to look, rather than just all the Capitalist Corner, Capitalist Corner, Capitalist Corner. People actually know what we talked about.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. I personally like you posting early in the morning like that, so that I can actually see what episode we're on, because I got tired of asking you every single time, what episode is this we're doing again? And I was always one off.
Yeah, but you're one off sometimes after I just tell you.
Yeah, so that's supposed to be a secret, though. So
Jim Valiant is yelling at me about thumbnails. Yes, Jim, thank you. You can give me more work to do. I can have to make new thumbnails for every episode as well. We are not the ARC UK, where we have our own producers and staff and everything else. What we have is me and Mark.
Hey,
that's it.
We have an argument, yes, that we need a producer, and then we can take care of all that. So we have a little argument going on in the chat that I think is worth pointing out here. Akira, who has given us 2 great quotes so far, says Mafia makes for a great name. Now, so she's one for that.
He. Don't insult the audience. Sorry,
he. Okay, I don't know. Forgive me. Roy says, "Send Sons of Anarchy." I say, no. Sorry, race. We can't have Sons of Anarchy. We are not anarchists. Mafia is Aaron says the mafia is how Trump operates and sees himself. So no. And Alan Thomas, aka Alex.
How many AKAs does this guy have?
Okay, so he says no. He votes no, and he is a member of the board. So that is a no.
Well,
for Alan, respecting Mafia. I'm still on the fence, though, to be honest with you, because I think it's clever, and I think if it's prefaced by New Mafia, then perhaps it gets people thinking.
Ray says that he was referencing the show when you were talking about gangster media. He wasn't suggesting that we call ourselves the Sons of Anarchy.
I'm hoping that wasn't the case, because I thought maybe we'd lost you.
Okay, so someone's suggesting here that to raise money, we ask for super chats. The Problem is that I have no idea how to do super chats at all. I have no clue. So I don't know how to do it. Somebody, that's the problem. We don't have tech savvy people here. What we have are an actor and an ex-con, neither of which who knows anything about this stuff.
Yeah, so anybody who wants to come on and help produce this, please come on and we can do the super chat thing. That would be great.
Well, I was just told that super chats are cringe. So see, this is the problem.
Super chats are cringe. Super chats are not cringe. They are a little cringe the way I love Euron, but they are a little cringe the way Euron does it because he just sells it and pushes it really hard and it feels a little cringy. And he's been advised not to do that, but he still does it.
Okay. So this guy says he's the ultimate authority on this, but I'll tell you this. I've been yelled at so many times in my chats or in my comments on YouTube that you interrupt too much, right? So this morning I go and look, and this guy tells me, I want to hear what you have to say. You let the other guy talk too much. You can't win.
Wait, somebody was saying that you interrupt too much?
No, not on this show. On the other show. It was in relation. I've been told in the past. Matter of fact, with the same guy. 2 episodes with Jim Valiant. One guy told me that I interrupt him too much and I need to let him talk. And another guy told me I let him talk too much and I need to get in there. So you just can't win. No, you can't.
No, you can't win. There's always going to be somebody. There's always going to be somebody in the crowd.
But I will say this. I think, Jim, you can chime in here. If you don't at some point interrupt Jim, he's going to go the whole show. Jim, am I right? Give me a thumbs up if I'm correct.
So I'm okay with
He says that Jim Valiant says I let him talk too much.
Hey, listen, I'm okay with Jim Valiant talking because to me, it's not talking too much. He's saying what needs to be said, and I sort of wait for the seam. Unfortunately, a lot of what he says is seamless. So it flows into the next concept, which flows into the next concept, which flows into the next. And then I have to wait for the proper pause. And then you think that, I'm letting him go on and I'm prejudicing the conversation against you.
Oh my God. We're relitigating this. I wasn't talking about what you did wrong. It was a thing between Jim and I, and you're immediately coming into what you did wrong.
About me. I'm an actor. I'm kidding. Hey, wait. James Valiant says Vito Corleone was a man of honor, but no. A very interesting comment. We could probably do a whole show on that. But back to the Mother Jones things. You're right. They came at this whole concept from bad faith. But I was like, well, again, the Trump administration is doing something accidentally that it should be doing. It should defund these spaces. Now I know. Now, what do you say to the fact that people use, because of our altruist ethics, they use the weakest among us as a pretense for expanding state power? So it's like this: you want to defund the handicapped. You want to take away the handicap protections for handicapped people and disabled people. You want to take away food. You want to take food out of the mouths of children. You want to hurt old people. Now, that's their go-to every time you say, no, I don't want to do any of that to any of those people. I want them to have access to all kinds of resources. I think the best way for them to have access to resources is to make them cheap and accessible, and that happens through a free market. It doesn't happen by stealing other people's stuff and giving it to them. Now, do you have a better argument than that? Something even, that would get these people even more?
Well, nothing's going to get those people, but I do like the dynamic that you pointed out. Well, I don't like it. I like the observation that you made. And if we look now, we see it now on the right. Like I've heard people say, you don't want to make America great again? What's wrong with that? Or, oh, what's wrong with making America healthy again? And why don't you want them to find, a cause of autism? So now we have the situation where instead of eliminating it or defeating it on one side, the right has just adopted the same policy, just with different talking points. And I find it grotesque because all it really does is evade the actual arguments that people's making, because nobody out there is arguing we shouldn't make America great again. Nobody out there is arguing that that poor people should starve in the streets and handicapped people should just die with no help. Those aren't the arguments that are being made. The arguments that are being made are about what the nature of government is, what government should be doing, what is going to work best for all of us, what is moral for all of us. It's not the BS that both sides put out there, which is why we have a great new political party that won't be engaging in that kind of stuff.
Yes, we do have a new political party. And if you haven't heard of that political party yet, it's called the American Capitalist Party. And you can join us at americancapitalistparty.org. You can donate and become a member, become a son, daughter, brother, sister of liberty right now. Ride the wave to its completion, my friends. Was that a shameless plug? I mean,
it was shameless, but it was good. So I don't really care if it's shameless.
Did you say it? Did you say it was shameless or was it?
Do you know, speaking of shameless, a guy yesterday, right? He chimes in on my timeline on X and tells me, when I see clickbait, I tell them immediately that I don't want to see this anymore. And it's happened with your stuff twice in the last 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? So like, what do you think I'm going to do? Alter my content because you don't like it? Okay. Beat feet, dude. You know what I mean? What the hell?
Yeah, again, you can't win. You can't some folks. So Enric says the right thinks the left is winning, so thinks to take their tactics. That's true. They are trying to take their tactics. They are stealing their tactics. What do you think about that?
I've heard it. I've heard it explicitly advocated. I used to listen to far more right-wing radio when I was incarcerated because I would just, every day I would listen to it at the same time. Now I only listen to it when I'm driving. But I do still catch right-wing radio, and I have heard this suggestion over and over again. We need to fight dirty like they do. We need to do what they do. And it just turns everything into a giant shit show that I really can't stand. And I mean, it's honestly, I used to enjoy politics. I don't enjoy it any longer. I think it's necessary to engage because the future of the country is at stake, but it's not something that I find fun. The arguments are, when you tune into these shows, the arguments are silly. They're not anymore about ideas and about real policy. It's all just tribal garbage going back, like chimps flinging poop back and forth at each other. It's very a big turnoff.
That's true. And you'd think a market like that would be easy to capitalize on, because if you have ideas, then you have an automatic leg up over these folks who are just appealing to emotion and arguing from the perspective of their tribe and incorporating contradictions into everything they say. But in a sense, you don't, because the audience has sort of gone down the tubes with the pundits themselves. Now, Rand talked about this in the 50s and the 60s, that politics used to be the place of principle, and then it became pragmatic, and now there's no uniting principles that hold any policy together on any side of the aisle. And that makes politics a distressing and disturbing thing to engage in. Now, that was 50 years ago, 60 years ago. I wonder what she would say now, where we've devolved, now we've devolved from pragmatism, but still dealing with complex conceptual issues, to non-conceptual, to the very concrete. We've boiled down politics to slogans like "Make America Great Again" or "Hope and Change," amorphous Orwellian slogans that could mean anything and empower the government with so much that they don't legally or morally have. But what do you say to this? I mean, it is despicable, and we're trying to do something that's sort of like trying to deadlift the earth, which is we're trying to put principles and concepts back into politics.
I was distracted because I was just reading Alan Thomas's comment in the chat, because what he says, I think I was going to make a joke, but in
other words, you did not hear a single word that I went on.
No, I did hear a single word. I just didn't catch the whole thing. I didn't integrate it, because Alan says most Americans have a 6th grade comprehension level, and you're hoping for a populace with PhDs. And to me, the reason that really caught my attention is because it's something perhaps I've been criticized for. I don't know. And it's this idea, and I don't know if this is what Alan was saying, but it's what comes to my mind. This idea that you kind of have to dumb it down to communicate to the lowest common denominator. And I've been told that I need to do that. A lot of people have told me that. it's not something I have any interest in doing. I have no interest in being anybody but myself, right? I like to joke. I like to laugh. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I've been, I've gotten criticism in my chats before. You're joking too much. This is a serious discussion. You don't have to watch. I mean, that may be harsh, but what am I going to do? I'm going to come on and just make myself into some creature that it doesn't resemble my authentic nature, my authentic self, and just pretend. I can't do that. And I don't want to communicate to the dumbest. I want to reach the brightest. That's actually the goal. That's what I want to do, because if you're only angling toward the lowest common denominator, that's what you're going to get. It reminds me of Rand when she talked about the people that they write novels directed toward the ignorant populace with toward a crummy audience, with the hopes that once they've established their audience, then they can change it up to quality stuff. But you really can't do that, because now you've gotten what you've got. And that's not what I want to do. Again, I don't think that's what Alan was referencing, but that's what came to my mind. And it's a issue that really resonates with me.
Sorry, I didn't hear any of that. I was actually concentrating on something Akira said. No,
See,
I'm
did
joking.
you do that on purpose?
No. I heard every word. In fact, I want to say this, that there's no, I was just doing that to bust your balls. No, there's a delicate line that we have to straddle here. And so in a sense, I'm playing devil's advocate. And I say this as a teacher, because I'm a teacher as well as an actor. And so this comes from my teaching experience. On the one hand, you have to boil down complex concepts in a way that are digestible to people. And the more economical you can be with your concepts, the more understandable and digestible they are to people, the better a teacher you are. So I've experienced that with acting, somewhat with objectivism. The more I have digested the concepts, the easier I can make them for other people to digest. Now, as a teacher and as a person in our position where we are espousing ideas, I expect as a teacher my student to reach up to me. I never stoop. And I will never stoop to the student. The student has to reach up to me. I will provide a level that they have to continuously reach for. Likewise here, we have to try to make concepts digestible for people, but you have to reach for us, folks. You have to reach for us. And in that reaching, you're going to become better. Now, that's not an expression of conceit. In the acting world, when I'm teaching students, I know more than them. I simply do, and I'm not going to patronize them. I'm going to tell them the truth, and I'm going to make them work. Because through that resistance, through that attempt to get to reach me, they are going to become better people. And likewise, conceptually, you're going to become better if you try to grapple with these principles. So we're going to put these principles out there, and we want you to grapple with them. We want you to challenge them, because that's how they become digestible to you. Reject them or accept them. I think you're crazy if you reject them, but reject them or accept them on your own terms and from an active mind. Now, so we have only 2 minutes remaining. So, Michael, I believe it's your turn.
It is. And I have a few things to say. First, Bonnie Bertrand, excellent point. Go for essentials, but in common sense, everyday language that people really use. She actually said that before you said what you said, but it's kind of a summary of what you said. And I agree. And just to sort of encapsulate the difficulty of this, I once wrote a paper, and one friend of mine told me, you're using too many big words. People aren't going to understand it. It's too much, that type of thing. I let another guy read it, and he says, it's okay, but you're really dumbing it down too much. Same paper, right? So the point is that if you simply go to please an audience, you're going to lose your mind, because everybody's different. Okay, capitalist.
Wait. Before you get to the capitalist of the day,
all right.
Chandler is bringing me back to the past here, because Chandler said he heard exactly a single word. So I want to know if you can remember what that single word was. Do you remember?
No, it's too late now. It's in the past. We've moved on. Stop trying to rehash old wounds. Don't open these things up.
This is going to bother me all day.
Well, I hope you're over it by 7 my time.
I'm going to be in the middle of wrestling today. I'm going to be like, fucking Leibowitz, man. One word.
Okay.
Go ahead, give us the capitalist thought.
Capitalist thought of the day is this. As you may or may not heard, a giant, and maybe the largest giant in the objectivist movement, Dr. Leonard Peikoff, has, in his words, soured on the Trump administration. Now, while I vehemently disagreed with him when he wrote his paper endorsing Trump, and I thought he was dead wrong, and I still think he was wrong, but I think it's something. First of all, the fact that he's 91 years old and still taking in new information and allowing it to drive his point of view is amazing. But I think it's also commendable. And I think it's something that needs to be praised. So we hear this thing where people come out and they say, well, he should have known from the beginning. He should have known from the beginning. Okay. Maybe he should have, but why do we do that? Why not give credit where it is due? That he's reflected, he's changed his mind, he's engaged in rationality. In the Ayn Rand fan club, he didn't say he wished Harris had won. That's not the point, because I don't wish Harris had won. I would rather neither one, but I wouldn't have endorsed either. And Dr. Peikoff has come around to the point of view where he wouldn't have endorsed either. And I think that's a phenomenal thing that he did. And I think it's really praiseworthy. And it speaks to the power of objectivism when applied.
Yes, thank you, Leonard, for changing your opinion on Trump. It shows that you are in the moment and still actively thinking about stuff. And let's face it, we owe what we know to you and are grateful to you for passing on Rand's concepts in a way that were digestible for everybody. So you should read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, if you haven't already, and check out the Ominous Parallels. Are you going to show your...
I was gonna, but it's too much because you end up with this thing, see it, that you can't see it, and it's a pain in the balls. So no.
It's a pain in the balls. Is that what you said?
Yes. Race Jacobson took an amazing shot right at the Ayn Rand fan club, and I absolutely love it. He says, you boys can't appeal to Peikoff anymore. You'll have to find another way to bend yourselves into pretzels to suck Trump off. Oh my God. I didn't know. I didn't see that part.
Sounds like
when I started to read it.
That sounds like a Pellegrino post. Holy crap.
I didn't know that's what he wrote. I just saw the first part. Oh no.
Hey, I have to reform myself. I made a bet with a friend for a month that I have to only speak. I can't use the C word anymore. So I have to, if I'm going to satirize people, I have to do it with a plum and class. So, all right. So you're not going to see any more brutalization of other people on X for a while, because I have to win this bet. First of all, I don't even really know what's at stake, but I have to win it anyway. All right, folks. So you've heard it all from the Capitalist Corner today. Please join us tomorrow. Same bat place, same bat time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk about the news from a capitalist perspective. I hope you're getting great value out of this show. And until tomorrow, please remember to always check your premises. Leonard Peikoff did, and look what it's doing for him. Peace, guys.